Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Katan, we have quite a few stories to talk about here this evening. We're going to talk first about the little bit of the history on India and Pakistan and how this skirmish that has lasted for so many years got started. So we'll look at a very interesting video on that. Also, a couple missile attacks, the U.S. striking into Yemen, and the Houthi rebels actually got a missile in past the Iron Dome, striking real close to the Ben Gurion airport. So we'll have those details as quite a few other stories. But first, Poland, the birthplace of one of the most influential popes of the 20th century, Pope John Paul II, is now seeing a decline in church attendance. So they are working hard to bring in new members, particularly focusing on young people, to strengthen their numbers.
Well, that's right. One Polish writer and analyst tells Al Jazeera, quote, most of the young people are not even against the Roman Catholic Church or against religion at all. They are completely indifferent. They just don't care about what the Roman Catholic Church says, end quote. Therefore, it is apathy that is really causing a decline in church goers these days.
While Catholic priests continue carrying on their duties to serve those sitting in their pews, it is unclear whether Poland will remain a strong Catholic nation. Now, some say it needs reformation to become more modern and progressive to appeal to the younger generation. It is unclear if the new pope will push them towards that goal.
Well, the World Food Program has been a vital lifeline for many across the world. Most recently, Palestinians have been receiving aid from the organization. But with the Israeli blockade that has been going on for over 2 months now, the World Food Program has announced they have run out of resources and can no longer feed the thousands of hungry Palestinians inside Gaza. Well, please take a look at this video from Al Jazeera to understand the desperate humanitarian crisis that has evolved.
Gaza City and speak to Hani Mahmoud. Hani, this must come as devastating news. The announcement of the World Food Programme, an organisation that obviously is a lifeline for large numbers of people in Gaza, has taken the unprecedented step of announcing that it's simply run out of food. What are the implications there?
Well, this was expected, Nivet. Just in the past few days, we've seen already the visible negative implications of a dwindling stocks, and it just based on many of the statements, just dwindling was a nice way to put that they were very close to run out of everything, and it was just in the past few minutes the announcement that basically all the warehouses, the stocks, and whatever resources were available just ran out completely, and now hundreds of thousands of families relying on the daily hot meals received by the WFP or from the World Central Kitchen, from community kitchens across the Gaza Strip, are going to stop operating. And in the past few days, we spent some time inside these displacement sites and forced displacements and evacuation sites for Palestinians, and we could tell how hungry people were and still hungry, where a water truck just coming by, and it's not enough for the thousands of families inside as they get out and with their empty gallons try to fill it with water. But soon enough, the water truck just leaves because it doesn't have a sufficient amount of water for everyone. Similar scenario repeats itself when it comes to community kitchens. They pull up inside these displacement sites with whatever meal they have prepared, but it's barely enough for a couple hundred families. We talk about displacement sites with thousands of families, including evacuation centers, including people who are inside temporary shelters, but they are also hungry due to the lack of and shortage of food supplies, the lack of fuel, the lack of cooking gas. They rely on community kitchens to eat their meal. We have close to 2 million people now who are 100% relying on community kitchens, and it's hard to imagine how this large number of people already displaced, traumatized, with scars of wars all over, are going to go by in the coming days. It's going to be very difficult to see how this plays itself out, but we're already seeing it happening. People are hungry. They already rationed supplies in the past days to the point now that they're running out. And it's not just the organization, but also families. They run out of supplies. The kitchens are inside the displacement tents or temporary shelters are empty. They don't have any of the basic necessities available for them. Just in the past couple of weeks, close to 450,000 newly displaced people are on the verge of famine due to the lack of food resources and food supplies and other survival items. 53 days now, it's how long the blockade has been going on, with zero entry of food, medicine, water, or fuel to keep bakeries and to keep other vital and essential facilities running across the strip. Famine is imminent right now with this large number of people going hungry. Famine is imminent right now with this large number of people going hungry. Famine is imminent right now with this large number of people going hungry. And the acute shortage of absolutely everything now, not just stalls are empty or shelves, but now everywhere food parcels are running out. Community kitchens are running out of supplies, and now the organization are supporting these community kitchens and other places are also running out of supplies.
Katan, with over 2 million people in the Gaza Strip, now their food programs are running out of food. They don't have food inside, so it's hard not to say that the Israelis are systematically starving those people out of existence.
Yeah, because what other options do the people have? They were displaced from their homes. They don't have any infrastructure to set anything up, and the several organizations that were set up to bring them food, they can't even do it anymore, and they've run out.
Right, sad situation. Well, Russian Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moslik was killed by a car bomb as the United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with President Putin to discuss the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire deal. And that isn't the first time a high-ranking officer was assassinated in recent times. Take a look at our next video.
The blast occurred when Lieutenant General Yaroslav Moskalik was passing by a Volkswagen car parked near his block of flats. Reportedly, the explosive device filled with shrapnel was planted in the car and activated remotely.
The Russian Investigative Committee has opened a criminal case on murder and illegal trafficking of explosives in connection with the explosion of a car on Nestorov Street in the city of Balashikha.
In 2015, Moskalik participated in the negotiations on Ukraine as a representative of the Defense Ministry General Staff. He's the second Russian general killed in such an attack. In December last year, Chief of the Radiation, Chemical and Biological Defense Troops Igor Kirillov was killed in Moscow. An explosive device was planted in a scooter. Russia has blamed Ukraine for both attacks. The assassination of General Moskalik on Friday coincided with the arrival of U.S. President Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow for talks with President Vladimir Putin. The incident didn't stop the two sides from discussing the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire deal. Despite pressure from the U.S., Russia isn't rushing to end the war unless its demands are met.
Well, with what we've been seeing taking place in the region, there's going to be retaliatory measures that will come forth from Russia from that bombing, that killing.
Right, and especially with President Putin meeting with the U.S. Special Envoy Representative Steve Witkoff, that's going to be quite a discussion that they're going to have with that taking place, at the same time they're meeting.
That's right. Well, the largest port in Oman was rocked by a massive explosion that blew out windows and buildings and cars in towns kilometers away from the blast. Initially, 8 people were known to have died and over 700 injured, but now we know that there have been a total of 40 deaths and over 1,000 people injured.
Well, it was thought that the explosion was due to some type of chemicals, and even a day later, as fires were still burning, the thick black cloud of toxic chemicals was indeed hanging over the surrounding area. Now, people in nearby towns and cities were cautioned by the Iranian health ministry to stay indoors, quote, until further notice. And if they needed to go out, to make sure to wear more protective clothing.
Scary. But what type of chemicals led to such a huge catastrophe? Well, a private maritime risk consultant called Ambry Intelligence believes the explosion was the result of improper handling of a shipment of solid fuel intended to be used in Iranian ballistic missiles. Now, the firm says they have knowledge of the shipment arriving from China in March.
Iranian officials have not commented on that accusation. However, the country has depleted its storehouse of ballistic missiles during the recent fighting between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
Well, according to reports by Houthi-affiliated media outlets, the U.S. has launched airstrikes in the northern city of Sadr in Yemen. At least 20 were killed and many more wounded. Now, the area has been a stronghold of the Houthis, of course, for a while now, and has been continuously targeted by the United States military in recent months.
Well, in Israel, the Ben Gurion airport was targeted by a hypersonic ballistic missile sent courtesy of the Houthi military. Now, Israeli authorities said that the damage to the airport and the surrounding area was minimal, but also they're wondering how the missile was able to penetrate the Iron Dome missile defense system. Now, there was a huge crater where the missile hit. Israeli military said that the country will strike back as the Prime Minister and his administration consider a potential response. And you know what we've seen in the past with the Israelis, they're actually very patient, and they plan those responses to really have the most effect on the ones that they deem responsible.
Yeah, and I know it's a big kind of morale boost for the Houthi military because Israel kind of really puts a lot of stock in boasting about their Iron Dome missile defense system. So if something can get through that, that kind of puts a little cramp in their style because, like many are saying, how did that even occur?
Right. Not to mention it puts a little bit more fear in the Israeli people themselves because they're trusting in the Israeli military to protect them, like you said, that Iron Dome system. So, and literally, it failed on this one.
That's right. Well, India and Pakistan has been at odds for over a half a century. Their feud is only growing worse. We'll take a look at this next video for more on the tensions between the two countries.
Let's talk about India and Pakistan.
India launching a military operation targeting what it calls terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir.
India and Pakistan have been exchanging a barrage of fire across the line of control.
So we've seen this major military escalation, and a lot of people are worried about where this could all go.
Because India and Pakistan are both nuclear-armed powers.
Why is all this happening now? Well, it's linked to an attack in Kashmir back in April. Remember, Kashmir is a disputed territory. India and Pakistan both administer parts of it, which are separated by what's called the line of control, but both countries claim all of Kashmir. The attack in April happened in a place called Pahalgam, which is really popular with Indian tourists. Gunmen came out of a forest and shot and killed 26 people.
The terrorist attack that triggered this crisis was particularly brutal and particularly egregious in the sense that it targeted civilians who were identified based on their religion, and it really hit hard across India, and the level of anger was especially strong.
So here's where you need to know a bit more about Kashmir and its history. India and Pakistan have basically been fighting over this territory ever since the partition of India, when Pakistan was created as a separate country. They fought a war over it in 1947, and that ended with a ceasefire and a division of the territory. Now, on the Indian side, there's been long-running opposition to Indian control. Many Kashmiris say their rights are being trampled on by the Indian government, and they want more autonomy. Some want independence. And over the years, armed groups have been fighting against what they say is an occupation. India has often accused Pakistan of supporting these groups, and that's what happened after the Pahalgam attack. India said the gunmen were linked to Pakistan, and 2 weeks later, it launched the missile strikes as a response.
India exercised its right to respond and preempt, as well as deter more such cross-border attacks.
India says it hit 9 sites in both Pakistan-administered Kashmir and in Pakistan's Punjab province.
They say that these targets were chosen based on credible intelligence inputs and that these were terror camps where attacks against India had been planned and directed from.
Now, Pakistan has denied having anything to do with the Pahalgam attack. It says India's missile strikes killed at least 31 civilians and injured dozens. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the strikes were unprovoked, cowardly, and an unlawful act of war. Both sides have also exchanged fire across the line of control. Pakistani fire killed at least 13 civilians in Indian-administered Kashmir, according to Indian officials. Meanwhile, Pakistan has vowed an even bigger response.
At a time, place, and means of our own choice.
Now, some of the details of what's happened so far are disputed or not very clear. For example, Pakistan has said it shot down 5 Indian Air Force jets, although India has given no official response to that. So to some extent, you've also got a war of words going on, and there's a lot of rhetoric on both sides. The big question right now is what could come next?
Much depends on how Pakistan will choose to react. A war, a heightened conflict and escalation is in the interests of neither of these 2 states. And also, it's the people in the region, the Kashmiris, who are not being served by any of this.
You know, it's interesting because you know, many years ago, you know, Mahatma Gandhi, he was a promoter of peace, and he tried to get, you know, the 2 sides to come together and to not you know, seek violence and finding a peaceful solution. But you know, his efforts were in vain because here, many years later, the 2 countries are still at each other's throats.
Right, and as they mentioned there, the war of words, and you know, that continuing to go back and forth, never really looking to find a solution, a peaceful solution, or even some type of compromise to the situation. They would rather just stay at odds and fight it out, and you have your territory, I have mine, and don't cross this line or else. And you know, but interesting history of the situation between Pakistan and India. Well, the IMF recently approved a $2.3 billion loan for Pakistan in less than 12 hours. Pakistanians launched an attack on India. Now, Pakistan has received 24 bailouts, the most any country has received from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Now, India questioned the IMF concerning how their funds were being used by Pakistan.
Well, our last video, courtesy of YPN, stays in that region of Pakistan and India, and it spotlights the talk of nuclear war, a 5th war between the brother nations. How far are the leaders of the 2 nations willing to go? Well, take a look at what they have to say.
Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has called for a meeting of the National Command Authority, which is responsible for Pakistan's nukes. However, there is nothing new about Islamabad's nuclear blackmail. Besides terrorism, the only other consistent thing is Pakistan's DNA is its rhetoric of a nuclear war with India. Earlier this month, Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Asif had threatened the world of a nuclear war. In an interview to Pakistan-based Sama TV, Asif said, and I quote, "If our very existence is threatened, God forbid, it becomes a matter of survival for us, then either we leave or no one does." At the United Nations, Pakistan's permanent representative Asim Iftikhar Ahmad repeated the same old nuclear rhetoric, calling Kashmir a nuclear flashpoint. Islamabad's representative had suggested that India should not contemplate any retaliatory strikes, as it will lead to a nuclear face-off. In April, Pakistan's railway minister Hanif Abbasi also issued a stark threat to India. Abbasi said that Pakistan's missile arsenal, including Gauri, Shaheen and Ghaznavi missiles, along with 130 nuclear warheads, has been kept only for India. And when India suspended the Indus Water Treaty In the wake of the Pahalgam terror attack, Pakistani Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari threatened that either water will flow in the Indus or the blood of Indians will.
Well, as we can see, it's not just the United States, countries like the United States, Russia, and China talking about the use of nuclear weapons, also Pakistan as well. And we know between the two countries, Pakistan and India, you know, there's a little over 300 nuclear warheads. So the potential is definitely there if the leaders are willing to cross that line. But of course, with nuclear weapons, really with any war, there are no winners.
Right, and you see the leaders, they throw around these statements like, look, if we don't live, nobody lives, you know. And they, as you mentioned, the nuclear threat that's out there, and these are considered smaller nations, but they still have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And detonating those nuclear weapons in that area is going to affect a lot more than just their countries.
Yeah, well, like the saying was coined back in the 70s or 80s, you know, MAD. It's mutually assured destruction. And that's what the leaders are doing right now. They're mutually assuring the destruction of themselves and their neighbors if they continue down this path of war instead of the path of peace. Well, if you'd like to learn more about the path of peace, how to go about it, how to learn it, and how to apply it, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you contact the House of Yahweh, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them by going to any of their websites. You can go to yahweh.com, yisroelhawkins.com, or yahwehsbranch.com. If you'd like to visit our website, you can go to YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do so by emailing info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, you can call the number that's on your screen now. And once again, don't forget to go to the Yisroel Says program and Ask Yisroel program. You can go to yisroelsays.com or askyisroel.com.
Well, don't go anywhere, because up next is another classic sermon by Yisroel Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thanks for watching.